Legendary Pokemon such as Zygarde fight the forces of destruction to keep our planet safe, but what if they were corrupted and turned evil? Rayquaza erasing the atmosphere and letting the sun burn the planet. Regigigas ripping apart entire continents. Dialga reversing time until we stop existing altogether. And even Arceus itself casting judgments upon the world. Could humanity survive without other legendary Pokemon to help? What truly would happen to the planet if every single legendary Pokemon went rogue? Howdy there, I'm Cresselia, connecting the world through Pokemon, and I'm very excited for this video because I always talk about how legendary and mythical Pokemon protect the environment and keep us safe. But today, we're talking about what happens when they go rogue, and yes, I will be including mythical Pokemon as a part of this. I'll be using info from the games and movies as they show us the full unrestricted power of these Pokemon and what they can do. So, without further ado, let's visit our friends in Generation 1 and Kanto. Beginning with the legendary bird trio, Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres, even when we look at their Galarian forms, they actually are pretty tame at the end of the day. Their rampage within the Lugia movie was mainly due to the imbalance of nature itself, resulting in them causing destruction around Shamudi Island. When Articuno gets captured, we find Zapdos looking at the free real estate and trying to take over, but it isn't impossible to communicate with. In fact, Pikachu being around was a big help because the two were communicating through electric shocks. The real problem is that we are now assuming communication isn't going to be a thing. We could be dealing with shadow Pokemon, fully enraged Pokemon we have to defeat, fully rogue in one way or another. There is no talk no jutsu happening today, so on and so forth, alright? So this trio of birds get absolutely nasty when they are proper angry. They manage to decide to work together in their rage though, and they even manage to take down Lugia without a hitch. It isn't until the balance of nature is restored within the islands that the three of them calm down and return to their respective islands. If we take this away from the movies, we get to at least see Zapdos enraged pretty often against people in Pokemon. Plus, there's so many different times that this trio of birds have been defeated and captured separately from each other, so they're actually fairly easy to handle. And just to keep things extra interesting, we are not allowed to ask other legendary or mythical Pokemon for help as we go through the rest of our list today. They're all off doing their own thing, or maybe they haven't been able to reach where we are, or they just disappeared. Something happened to them and we don't know, so we're all on our own. Let's just keep that in mind. Otherwise, these guys are pretty solitary to begin with and aren't going to do too much damage. Articuno would bring isolated blizzards wherever it traveled, Moltres will burn up a few villages and forests, and Zapdos will cause intense isolated storms to pop up wherever it travels to. Incredibly tame for Pokemon that don't care for being around anyone to begin with. The real problem begins with Mewtwo, a being created to be stronger than anything in nature, and it shows. Because it has taken down multiple trainers, it has the intelligence to create functioning clones, and even just within the games, it managed to resist Team Flare even after being caught. It just kind of stared at them in the face and said, nah, I don't feel like Mega Evolving today, I'm just going to take a nap instead. In the original movie, it had an entire army, which may as well have been created with perfect IVs, as they were absolutely destroying trainers in clone matches with their Pokemon. The only thing that actually stopped Mewtwo was Mew, and even then, they really just ended in a draw because Mewtwo realized, oh, man, it really doesn't matter if I'm a clone or if I'm a naturally born Pokemon. We all have value in life, and I don't need to prove that I exist. And I'm not going to do the quote because it hits me right in the heart. And before you do say anything in the comments, yes, that was the original purpose behind the story, before 4Kids got their grubby little paws on the movie, not whatever they kind of peddled out. I would like to talk more about it, but I've already mentioned it in a number of other videos, and we're not here for that today. But what would have happened after Mewtwo won? Well, it would have destroyed all of humanity, and maybe even every single non-clone Pokemon. It was on a path of destruction even within the manga, where entire environments and cities were reduced to nothing but rubble. And that was just from Mewtwo existing and just passing through the area. It wasn't actively trying to destroy anything, which it's very much shown that the turmoil of storms and tidal waves that prevent Ash and the gang from traveling throughout the waters was entirely caused by Mewtwo to begin with, meaning this legendary is a greater natural disaster than you might actually believe. Now, we have to ask, would Mewtwo actually legitimately kill every single human? Yes, not a single doubt about it. Would it kill every Pokemon though? No. It might absolutely decimate at least one of each species just to show it who's boss and continue proving itself to the entire world and itself. And then, to make matters much worse, we already know that Mewtwo can Mega Evolve entirely on its own. It does this in the movies, in Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, Pokemon Tournament, but doesn't do so in Legends ZA when we run up to fight it. It doesn't go Rogue or doesn't go Mega Evolve. It's kind of weird, actually. Maybe it was going easy on us. I'm not really sure. After all, we did get the Mega Stones from an unknown place, so it might have gifted those to us? Question mark. Now, with these Mega forms, it has a whole new level of power. In its X form, it can sprint 100 meters in 2 seconds. If we math that up, it would be 3,000 meters a minute, 180,000 meters an hour, or rather, 180 kilometers an hour, which translates to 111.847 miles per hour. Here's the joke, though, because Mega Y is shown to also move at incredible speeds, but instead, these speeds are so fast that it makes everyone else seem as though time has effectively stopped. So if we really wanted to, we could say that it could go Mega Y, and only the fastest of Pokemon could keep up with it. Otherwise, we'd blink and find ourselves at the pearly gates. Which it doesn't even need to come anywhere near us, since as per its Pokédex, despite its decreased size, it has phenomenal mental power and is capable of smashing buildings with a mere thought. Imagine, with every thought you have, another building is reduced to rubble. Not even to rubble, dust. Unless you're running on one brain cell, then within a minute, we'd find an entire city disappearing. A mortifying thought, and it will not be the last mortifying thought. Although no pun intended there, thought thinking, I genuinely don't think humanity will survive if Mewtwo went proper rogue. Sure, it's technically done so in its shadow form within Pokken, but in pretty much every other form of media, it seems like a fully rogue Mewtwo, not limited by game mechanics, especially in Mega form, would be a nightmare that we are nowhere near prepared enough to handle. It is literally stronger than anything found in nature, and it has continued to be so since Generation 1. But hey, at least all the Pokemon would survive the tragedy. Humans, on the other hand, not so much. On to Mew. This is a legitimate horror show, and I never fully realized just how bad things would be if we had a rogue Mew until about a month or two ago, because within Pokemon Journeys, we see Ash, Go, and a number of other trainers fit with highly trained Pokemon, and even 2 Urshifu hunting down a Kyogre and a Groudon. They follow them until they butt heads and merge together into Mew, revealing that it had split itself up and become both Kyogre and Groudon separately. And when they all tried to fight Mew, it simply reflected attacks back or dodged them, and then retaliated with so much power that it one-shot every Pokemon there, all while giggling to itself the entire time. If you've ever wondered why this Pokemon is so carefree, then now you know why. It is so powerful that it literally has no concerns whatsoever. It can transform into multiple legendary Pokemon or just decimate you in its normal form, as it can use almost literally any move that it wants. It can't be stopped, and every single person that has ever tried has just failed in history. You do not get to choose Mew. Mew chooses you, and that's only for a brief period of time before it gets bored or satisfied with the situation and teleports to some place on the other side of the planet. By the way, Mew does have a confirmed kill count, not just Mewtwo. It has been, at the absolute least, been suspected of causing the avalanche that killed Jesse's mom thanks to the radio drama prequel, so let that sink in. And the only argument you might have against that is that, I don't know, Giovanni 20, 30, 40 years later still hears her voice on the radio, which that sounds like a ghost on the radio still trying to hunt down Mew. Yeah, this bubblegum Jerboa fetus has committed murder, and it doesn't care in the slightest, by the way. So once again, another Pokemon I don't think we stand a chance against in the slightest. There's a reason some of these Pokemon weren't summoned by Hoopa in the Clashes of Ages movie, because the movie would just end in a couple of seconds, and I'm pretty sure Mew could, blow up the planet, travel through space, go blow up a couple other planets if it wanted to. On to Johto and the legendary beasts Raikou, Entei, and Suicune. Assuming they're all working together, we might see the destruction of the entire planet. Raikou summoning thunderstorms all the time while blocking out sunlight would be the first problem. This is something that it actually does in Pokopia, and it isn't until it thinks that humans are back that it does part the clouds that completely overshadow Vermilion City. No light, by the way, means no plants, drops air quality, and deters other Pokemon from coming into the area. In fact, it might even encourage things like cyanobacteria to breed in excess and result in massive dead zones throughout the entire water zones, ensuring that for the rest of time, that nothing could ever grow in the water ever again. Quotation mark, or little asterisk around that. plus anything that would touch it would effectively be put into incredibly high risk of death. And as a side note, yes, I spent 2 years studying the factors that led to cyanobacteria colonies in water and just how bad things can get. And we're lucky Pokopia didn't want to throw that at us because people have spent thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to fix this problem, and it's an absolute mess. But it still needs to be done because we caused the most extreme versions of it. It just takes a very, very long time and a lot of committed effort. So sure though, back on track, Raikou might bring down some heavy storms and block out the sun, nothing we haven't technically seen with Zapdos, but how much worse can it get with Entei? Well, as per the Pokédex, all it needs to do is bark to cause a volcano to erupt. And I don't know about you, but I don't distrust the Pokédex. Some of the absolute most absurd things to be said in the Pokédex that many people think are written by children actually turn out to be true. Plus, we don't really get to see it bark, quote-unquote, as per the Pokédex, though that might just be a mistranslation. And even if it was, we already know that Entei has some ridiculous levels of firepower and can still cause volcanoes to erupt, even if not barking. And in addition to that, just as a point to Entei being a lot more powerful, Ho-Oh's signature move, Sacred Flame, is a part of Entei's move roster naturally. Meanwhile, Suicune becoming evil would still bring about some incredible power, but here's kind of the funniest part to me. Normally, it just races across water and purifies everything at a touch. When Pokemon are negatively charged with emotion or become evil, they usually manage to do the opposite of what their powers have or have opposite behaviors. So now imagine a Suicune that travels across the land and makes every single drop of water undrinkable. More than this, at least within the manga, Suicune did run around throughout the entire region, searching far and wide, not for every Pokemon to understand, but to rather bop every single gym leader within Johto. It would arrive, stomp them to try and see if they were worthy, and then disappear. Mind you, Suicune is also the closest of the trio with Ho-Oh and is friends with the Unknown, which that would make it so much worse if we let every single legendary work together. And dear God, the Unknown aren't legendary or mythical, but they might as well be with all the ridiculous amounts of power they have. They've at least been stopped every time they go crazy, so kinda is what it is. But if they're not stopped, yeah, no, reality itself is gonna warp into nothingness. I legitimately believe that if these three went rogue, we'd find the skies of the world covered in ash and soot from volcanic eruptions. If not that, then the sky would be blotted out by thunderclouds everywhere, and then Suicune would just make sure we can't drink water ever again. It would actually be a pretty slow and painful demise, but I think humanity might be able to take them if the trio appeared in front of anyone. Otherwise, if they just use guerrilla tactics and their abilities at a distance, we're doomed. Lugia is up next, and this is when Pokemon starts getting biblical. Well, technically, Pokemon gets a lot of biblically or religiously inspired dex entries starting in Generation 4, but bear with me, because it starts saying that Lugia can cause a storm that lasts 40 days with just a single flap of its wings. This is a direct reference to the Flood of Noah that lasted 40 days and 40 nights, just to put that into a bit of perspective for you. At first, we think this is just stretching its powers, but Lugia only becomes more powerful as this series has continued, and does say in Pokopia that it controls its powers much better now than it did back then. What's a wild moment, at least within the movies, is that Lugia appears when the evil Hoopa Unbound starts causing trouble and goes toe-to-toe with it and other legendary Pokemon, which it is a Lugia summoned by our good Hoopa, but we'll get to that whole crazy mess later. It's not lore-breaking at all, as it turns out. Once again, we have a Pokemon that isn't just smart, it's vastly intelligent due to psychic power. Even within the games, we're told the tale of when the Royal Islands were once one island, all before wars broke out over that island, and Lugia put a stop to it all. It defeated the armies, split up what was once a singular island, and even moved the Royal Islands to a safer location altogether. This Ocean Azura Dragon would just cause massive storms and rip apart entire islands if we dared to oppose it in any way and it went on a rampage. We're not standing a chance against something that sleeps all day, then wakes up and chooses violence. It's got too much power stored up in its body. Honestly, it could probably just bop all of humanity pretty casually since a simple fluttering of its wings can blow apart regular houses. I'd be afraid to see any other level of power it has whenever it decides to actually unleash it. Which, to be fair, does use Aeroblast in the movies, and it blows up an entire glacier, real Dragon Ball Z style. It's Rainbow Bird time with Ho-Oh, which is actually a little hard to figure out. Every time it appears, it isn't for long. It revived Pokemon to become the legendary beasts, it perches upon its tower, and in only one brief instance, we get to see it fight Ash within the I Choose You movie. I mean, it is a brief moment, but we do get to see the power of what I assume is Sacred Flame, whereas Ho-Oh immediately uses it out of the gate as soon as the battle starts, which I gotta appreciate. No wasting time with weaker moves, hit him with your signature, baby. As a funny side note, this is the movie where the meme comes from, where Ash tells Nurse Joy he fought Ho-Oh, and she just says, "That's nice," like any adult who doesn't believe what a child says, only to realize a few seconds later what he's had actually said, and he meant it. Maybe Ho-Oh wouldn't be all too bad, but I also believe that since Ho-Oh can so easily restore life, it might be able to take life as well. That's really just speculation, since again, we never see it go on a full rampage, except we kinda do in the manga, and it took getting Lugia to join in with our trainers to put a stop to Ho-Oh and help it regain its senses, but I'll save the manga story for a different day. Let's just say it could probably wipe out humanity with ease, just the same as its counterpart. If you thought Celebi would be an easy defeat and we could move on from it, you're so incredibly wrong. Because as we know it, Celebi, in an absolute rampage, creates this massive monstrosity that took Suicune's intervention to help put a stop to. And even then, it was a real rough time beginning to end, as we truly had an evil Celebi within its own movie. It blasted through groups of Pokemon, destroyed the environment itself, and even poisoned the waters within the area as part of the entire process. To make matters worse, it has a massive laser beam as a ranged attack. So yeah, we're pretty much dealing with a nature spirit that has become Godzilla in its own right. The only reason they even stopped Celebi was because they appealed to its heart and were able to snap it back to reality. Otherwise, even just touching the vines that it used were painful for our characters and Suicune. Of course, then, we also get to see that Celebi overworked itself, using all of these powers to the point of nearly dying, and well, it actually did die, spoiler alert, but here's the kicker. Every single Celebi from across the timeline, past, future, alternate reality, presence, came down to Celebi to bring it back to life. Celebi, in other words, is omnipotent, omnipresent, and can travel through the timelines for each other. It even forced you to go through a timeline. I hope you can fight a Tyrantrum with your bare fists, because it might just throw you into the Jurassic to get your ass kicked. I get one uncensored swear in this video just for that joke. This also means, though, that even if you defeat one Celebi, there's an infinite number of other Celebi coming in like wasps from a nest to wipe you from existence and any other version of you that would have existed across any timelines. Celebi going rogue isn't just the end of our world as nature itself exterminates whatever it wants, but rather it is the end of all timelines. As per usual, I am wrapping all 5 of the Regis and Regigigas into one little present with a bow and throwing them at the first person I see. Wait, actually, can I lift any of the Regis? As it turns out, Regice at 385.8 pounds, I could squat the weight of. Regieleki, I could do so with ease at 319.7 pounds if you give me an insulating bodysuit so it doesn't actually hurt me. And Regidrago would be stretching it, but I think it's still possible. Not throwing any of them more than a foot though, that's for sure. Back on track though, I think this one is absolutely best judged when we have the whole family of Regis present. Because on one hand, sure, the Regis are pretty destructive and terrifying at the end of the day, but they have been defeated multiple times and can continue to be defeated time and time again, with a few lives lost here and there, I'm sure. The real problem is when Regigigas enters the ring, because it can use its powers to control all of the Regis, and once it wakes up from its slow start, we are truly and absolutely doomed. And you might say, hey, wasn't Regigigas already sealed away? That means that somebody had to defeat it. And the answer, my dear viewer, is yes. But I see no evidence that we ever actually fought Regigigas in order to seal it away. All I see is it waking up because we bothered it in 90% of the locations, or, at least within Hisui, it being unsealed by the use of 3 plates of Arceus within a temple built to worship Regigigas. Meaning this isn't defeating and sealing Regigigas away, this was absolutely sealing it away to keep people from being stupid and trying to capture or attack it in general. I have a full video explaining that you can go watch, but I'm going to keep moving on. Because Regigigas is the one who pulled the continents, meaning it had to have once been much larger in the past unless it's falling down the trenches of the world. But even in its smaller size, it is arguably one of the most dangerous and most powerful Pokemon in lore and should not be messed with. Of course, there is one person in the anime, Hunter J, who tried to control Regigigas and failed pretty handily, as it took more talk no jutsu and proving ourselves to Regigigas that not every human is trying to hurt it and that it should work with us. Otherwise, it was stated that it would likely have continued its rampage with just 3 of the Regis, the original ones, destroyed an entire city, and maybe even keep going from there with no real way to stop it until it calms down all on its own. And to add to this, there is one mythical Pokemon we'll talk about later that is one of the only Pokemon that isn't Arceus that has been proven to be more powerful than Regigigas and many others, but again, we'll get there later. For now, before we move on to the rest of our friends from Hoenn, I just want to say thank you for watching. This is actually so much fun, and I really hope you're enjoying this as much as I am. And if you are, make sure you subscribe for all the good content on this channel. I am planning on making a video soon-ish regarding how canon is every single Pokemon movie, so you want to keep your eyes out for that. Also, let me know what you think some of your favorite legendaries or mythical would do if they rampaged. I'm sure there's plenty of other options than what I'm talking about today, and I'd love to hear them, as not only do I love reading comments, but they also appease the almighty algorithm alongside likes and hyping the video, so make sure you do that as well. Lastly, I want to thank members of the channel. Their support means I can take the extra time to make longer videos and have deeper dives and bring quality content to everyone. If you want behind the scenes info, early access to videos, and members exclusive content like this list here, which will be getting a new video thanks to the members only voting on it, which that video will actually be all about what if I was every single gym leader? What would my teams look like as an electric gym leader, a grass type gym leader, so on and so forth. Why would I have my team that way? Because it's more than just about power. It's about a theme, it's about utility, it's about having Pokemon that help me research or fit a theme. So that's a really fun video, and I've already begun scripting it. You don't want to miss out on that either. But enough of all that. Thank you again for watching, and on with the video. Latios and Latias are another pair that at first seem like they're not going to do much. Their biggest feats are staying hidden by being invisible, moving incredibly fast, and then sacrificing Latios to become the Soldew so that way Altomare isn't destroyed by a tsunami thanks to the imbalance of energy, which I guess we know what would happen to Altomare now if that specific Latios immediately turned evil. Yikes. I will say that we're still dealing with a pair of Pokemon that will likely just turn people into donuts, considering they fly at Mach speeds and could just ram into us. And if you think you're avoiding an attack at Mach speed, that is the speed of sound itself. If you play this video out loud, the instant in which my voice is heard by your ear holes is the instant in which you would be getting tackled by a creature that weighs over 100 pounds. On top of that, they can kind of just seemingly transform into Mega Pokemon on their own, which I should clarify one thing right now. If any Pokemon has enough energy poured into it, they not only can become larger, but if they're able to Mega Evolve, then they do so. This is what happens in Legends Z after all, so I'm just keeping that in-game canon here as our Pokemon go rogue. When they do Mega Evolve, they're reaching speeds of Mach 4, which is 4 times faster than the speed of sound. And if they really wanted to, they could just turn invisible and spear themselves straight through you. Other than that, I really can't see Latios and Latias causing much damage to the world itself, and we could probably put a stop to them if we wanted to before they wiped out humanity, but that's going to be pretty hard at the end of the day. Believe it or not, Kyogre and Groudon rampaging would not only be world ending, but it would also end in the same exact way. And I hear you, Krillix, have you gone insane? Well, the answer is yes, a long time ago. I let that free. But one of the ways that the world ends is using lava to cover the world in land, and the other is drowning the entire world through storms and floods. And you ask me, how is that the same? And we'll get there. Just you wait. Because yes, these are world-ending threats through and through in different ways. It's actually through Pokemon generations, and we even get to see them in their primal forms really pop off. In the case of Groudon, it awakens from within a volcano and just starts laser beaming entire islands, destroying all oceans along the way and causing cataclysmic explosions. Not too much left here as it eventually turns towards Maxie and Team Magma before charging up a beam, and the vision cuts back to Courtney before any of that even happened. Meanwhile with Kyogre, it's a bit scarier, I would say, because not only does it start to fly and create massive twisters over the water, causing Pokemon on any of the islands nearby to panic and run for their lives, but it gets even worse, because while it is flying through the air and causing massive storms, it does hear Archie yelling at it to knock it off and listen to him. And well, you really wanted to listen to you? Sure. You really shouldn't be grabbing the attention of a multi-100-pound flying whale causing the end of the world, because when it does listen, its yolky yellow eye snaps to Archie and it drops down to the ocean, bringing massive ship-shaking tidal waves that hide Kyogre until the final moments where the episode stops just before Kyogre eats the entire ship. Or blasts it, we don't really know. In both of these scenarios, we do not see Rayquaza stepping in at all. This is the full success of Team Aqua and Magma's missions in separate universes, all within a time where we, as the hero, likely did not manage to restore Rayquaza's energy and help it Mega Evolve. The world will either burn or be flooded, but it is strangely not the end. As we find out through Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, Archie and Maxie had a much deeper plan in place that was called Project Azoth. This did involve controlling the primal forms of these Pokemon, harnessing their energy, awakening them to their true power, and resetting the world almost like a Garden of Eden, as I like to describe it. A reset from everything humanity has ever done, a restoration of our lovely planet. But unfortunately, they hadn't realized that doing this also meant that all lives would be wiped out, that this is a true and absolute restart. On one hand, Groudon evaporates everything, but it isn't going to go anywhere. All that water has to come back at some point. It'll all just go up into the atmosphere, block out light alongside the soot and ash, and eventually we might see dinosaurs and an ice age restarting, so on and so forth, right? Something along those lines. On the other hand, we'd see the world as it was before the dinosaurs, with supercontinents older than Pangea in existence again, and the world resetting with all sorts of jawless creatures as life starts back over from the very beginning all over again. As a very small side, not to get too emotional, but this idea of the world resetting is like the only thing keeping me from absolutely freaking out, considering the events of the natural world right now, that even if everything hits the fan harder and harder with higher temperatures and melting glaciers, the life will one day restart, even if it takes a couple million years. I won't be here, but I hope to see it from an afterlife of sorts, and it's just something that these Pokemon remind me of all the time, and I can't not talk about it. Or I kind of at least hope that I could be reincarnated as a lizard on a rock or something. That'd be pretty cool too. So yeah, back on track proper, Groudon and Kyogre might end the entire planet with their power, but eventually everything would cycle all over again, and we'd see the rebirth of everything that ever was and ever will be all over again. Pretty cool stuff, I'd say. Rayquaza, the Jade Emperor, Lord of the Atmosphere, Savior of Humanity, the Delta Pokemon itself, the Being of Change. It is a being of change, and if it goes rogue, then we're really in trouble. Sure, we've seen it in the Mega Dimension DLC, and it did go rogue there, and we fought it, resulting in a two-part fight as it Dark Souls bossed itself back to health and obtained its Mega form, but it took 3 legendary stronger than champion tier trainers to win that fight. Even then, I'm not even sure humanity could take on Rayquaza if it decided to do more than just fight us head-on in a rogue state. This dude controls the weather, can take away the primal forms of Kyogre and Groudon in a snap, and it really, if it really wanted to, could just likely pop the ozone layer. I'm talking real Omni-Man levels of horror here. Rayquaza would look at the planet and say, I can always start over again, as the atmosphere is destroyed, and it lets the sun do all the work for it. All it needs to do afterwards is patch up the ozone layer, because guess what? Rayquaza, at least according to the manga, which is official Pokemon released content, states that Rayquaza releases ozone from its body, and that's how it's able to function in space. So, again, pop a hole, watch all life be snuffed out, and then restart. Seemingly pretty tame by comparison to the power and acts of our other Pokemon, but far more horrifying in implications. Also, just in case you thought it, because I did too, no, there would not be any survivors, not even if you went underground. The ozone is effectively helping regulate weather patterns and temperatures. Without it, then the sun having direct impacts on oceans and land would do more than just heat things up. There would be much larger, much greater, more dramatic and dangerous storms as there's more humidity in the air, wind would be moving stronger and more erratically than we're used to, and we'd see global warming and climate change on a scale that we can't even fathom. It would be arguably one of the most chaotic ends to the planet possible, or at least to all living things on the planet, as eventually things would restart again, all thanks to a Pokemon that helps bring order to the world in its own way and has often been an ally protecting humanity, now deciding it's done with us. Jirachi seems like it would be a cute little Pokemon we could probably contain, but it gets complicated really fast. Subject A, it makes May disappear. Subject B, it creates a Groudon clone that was going to absorb the energy of the entire planet. Subject C, it then is supercharged by the Millennium Comet, and at full power it tackles false Groudon into the sky with Doom Desire and blows it up into an array of fireworks. Like, what the absolute is going on with mythical Pokemon? I've known they're powerful for a long time, but they are way stronger than we've ever imagined. And don't tell me all the movies don't count. We see the mythicals in movies first, and then they get distributed to the games via events. That argument is irrelevant, and you should just let yourself have more fun, I say. We know Game Freak is having fun after all. And, like, to not actually be mean because that's all a joke, like, enjoy the media as much as you want, the way you want, but at the same time, they don't care about what's canon, what's not. They're just like, let's do something fun. Let's make Jirachi blow up Groudon. Yeah. But seriously, Jirachi going rogue will just doom Desire the entire planet into oblivion. Our mission isn't to defeat Jirachi. We've hit objective survive levels of danger. For 3 days, the planet and everything on it is at major risk of mass destruction. And after those 3 days, Jirachi is going to go to sleep, and we're going to need to trap it and put it inside of Tartarus for our own sake. I love it as one of my top 3 favorite mythicals, but I do not want to be on the same plane of existence as a rampaging Jirachi. I don't think anywhere is safe, no matter how far you go. Moving on, we've technically seen Deoxys in a rampage, but it did take Rayquaza or even Mega Rayquaza to put a stop to a singular Deoxys. What's scarier is that when a second Deoxys hits LaRue City within the movie, Rayquaza struggles to keep up. Between force fields and creating hundreds if not thousands of clones, nothing was able to keep up at all. In fact, the only reason things calmed down even a little was because Deoxys was able to recover and help heal the other Deoxys that Rayquaza reduced to nothing but a central core. Otherwise, I'm not sure we could even handle this Pokemon at all. In fact, in that movie, both Deoxys absolutely handles Rayquaza with ease before saving our protagonist because they realized, oh, they just want to be lesbians together or whatever the heck it is. I don't know. Deoxys doesn't have a gender, right? They tried telling Rayquaza to chill out, and while Rayquaza is going wild like an angry bull as the duo of Deoxys are trying to calm it down, things get pretty rough and all the machines in the city fully malfunction. But again, that part is a story for a different day. I will say though, it is funny that they defeat Rayquaza for a moment, and when all the robots try to wash over Rayquaza, basically about to kill it as a defense protocol, they move to save it, and luckily they're able to do so, or else we'd have a few extra people dead by the end of that movie from falling a great height. If Deoxys did manage to go on a full rampage without holding back, there likely wouldn't be any electronics around either, as it sees through electromagnetic radiation, and anything that interferes will mess up its vision. So it would likely be destroying everything electronic. Though that's not to say it stopped by that, by the way, as again we do get to see an army of cloned Deoxys take on a whole city. So it would almost literally be like the virus that is spreading and taking over the planet. A world ruled by Deoxys, and as long as everyone behaves, nobody has to die. Into Gen 4 and the Lake Guardians, they are not an easy trio to take on, but at the same time, they are the beings that granted emotion, knowledge, and willpower to all humans, and they are stated to have the absolute power to be able to take those things away. So it's not that they would even fight us, they would just, strip us of all of our mental cognitive abilities and then systematically wipe out humanity. But hey, don't worry, the planet will live on with Pokemon and plants, no problem. It would just simply be a world without humans, a world only of Pokemon. Also, they also have a kill count. They killed Hunter J. They were the ones that finally put an end to her reign as their future sight hit her ship. It went into a whirlpool, and then the glass started breaking open. There were explosions, I'm pretty sure. They are murderers. There are so many Pokemon that are murderers, and I think I need to make a video about Pokemon with a confirmed kill count now. Just like we assumed with our other legendary Pokemon, we're going to assume that Dialga has somehow managed to gain the upper hand completely and has the capacity to defeat not only the Lake Guardians, but also Palkia, Giratina, and then I guess, Arceus is not caring at all. Say whatever you want. Again, a Pokemon that is without any other Pokemon trying to stop it. I mean, also, look at when Primal Dialga was going nuts in Mystery Dungeon. Where was Arceus? Where was Palkia? Where was Giratina? Just trusting that things were going to work out? Definitely seems like a thing an omnipotent god would do, but come on, man. We're mortals here. We need a little bit of help. I will say there is one episode within Pokemon Journeys that does show just how bad things can get. Dialga in its rampage is fighting, but it actively controls the flow of time to its near full capacity and de-ages Pokemon, reverting them so far back in time that they not only devolve, but even become eggs, even though age and evolution are separate things in Pokemon, I guess they can be one and the same according to this. There are very few things, though, that terrify me when it comes to raw showings of power, and if I was up against most of these Pokemon, somehow I would accept fate, fight for my life, even if it was a pitiful fight. But in the case of Dialga, what can any of us actually do? We take one step forward and watch as the floor comes to meet our face, as our legs have shortened and our minds have stupefied back to the age of fetus. That's really it. That's the game right there. Dialga turns us all into babies, and then Roar of Times us into the stratosphere. Just, whee, gone. If it really wanted to, it could even send us back in time and place us at the exact impact site of the meteor that killed the dinosaurs. Then the timeline wouldn't be ruined by us existing in the past, and we'd just cease existing. We'd be nothing but dust. Or how about Dialga just uses its raw power, hits the JoJo stance as it becomes its origin form, and then erases us from existence. In canon, we are only supposed to be able to stand up to this deity thanks to the help of Palkia within Legends Arceus. And I get it, the Red Chain also exists in the modern day that's supposed to help us, but that is assuming, once again, the late Guardians are here to help. And I've already stated, no legendary is helping us anymore. I think this is legitimately one of the scariest legendaries to go up against to me above all else. The idea of being turned into a truly 100% useless and ineffective baby by a god that takes away all of my self-autonomy and any chance of winning whatsoever does not sit well within my brain in the slightest. I would literally rather be eviscerated by Rayquaza like Deoxys was than fight Dialga like this. Moving on to Palkia, at least it's a little bit easier to accept since it's just gonna scream its cool Pokemon cry, which I'll play here, and then use Spatial Rend to, rend space all over the place, Even its home dimension has been said that it's been reduced to ribbons, likely because it's Spatial Rended its own home. I'm not 100% sure if this would be just a Palkia thing, by the way, but both in the Darkrai movie, where Dialga and Palkia fought, and in the Hoopa movie, where they fought on the same side and then were kind of defeated, reality started to kind of completely disappear. I mean, some real I don't feel good Mr. Stark level stuff happening as everything seemed to be separated and enclosed by a barrier, slowly enclosing and dusting any matter that did exist. It is stated, at least when Palkia was born, space began to stabilize and expand with every breath it took, and how the walls of the universe were effectively destroyed, allowing things to expand infinitely. So maybe when Palkia goes on a rampage, or when Palkia is injured or in danger, those walls come crashing back in. Which, that's another scarier scenario too, now that I think of it. The entire universe having secluded spaces, slowly enclosing on themselves like a flesh-eating bacteria that would make holes in our body, or I guess for a less graphic option, we have the barriers used in Battle Royale games or Elden Ring Night Rain that slowly encloses around you. One touch, and you're reduced to space dust. Quite literally. So once again, Palkia doesn't even have to actually do anything. It could just revoke our space privileges and dust us completely. The alternative is getting spatial rended, so not a lot of good options here. Big boy Giratina. We've seen what it could do on a rampage, and luckily Arceus stepped in and was like, hey, one of you humans will be the hero of Hisui. Take these noble Pokemon as your own. And then they bopped Giratina back to its realm. And then later on, it paired with Vola, and then we stopped it. Then Ash and the gang had to stop it when it was fighting Dialga over its realm being screwed up thanks to Dialga and Palkia fighting with each other. And then, as if all these timelines are actually the same timeline, it came to the universe's rescue when Cyrus captured Dialga and Palkia, trapping him in the Distortion world. So we have a lot of different things going on. The first of which is that it could just destroy something in the Distortion world according to the anime, which would then destroy something in our world according to those movies, as we are mirroring dimensions to each other, which that is canon within the games. If we disregard that though, we still have a Pokemon that outclasses Dialga and Palkia, only being stopped by humans or other legendary and mythical Pokemon interfering. I mean, Dialga was straight up dragged into Giratina's realm and seemed to be handled pretty well without too much of a problem until Shaymin, exploded. The greater problem with Giratina going wild is that it definitely seems to have the capacity to rival Arceus at the very least. Maybe not the original one, but at least a fragment of it. And by that capacity, technically, by scrapped lore, all of these guys are roughly equal fragments of the original one, but that's not something I'm going to get into today. I actually have a whole mini playlist for that on the Age of Giants if you're interested. Nevertheless, gather the plates for Giratina, and it could become a monster just like the Arceus we know, at least in theory. Then, even if it isn't doing that, then the rage of Giratina does cause distortions to appear alongside immense amounts of energy to come crashing down onto Pokemon. This results in raging alpha Pokemon, raging noble Pokemon, random Pokemon being dragged through time and space to where we are, and Lord knows what else. Giratina going truly wild without any other legendary Pokemon to help stop it is effectively opening up Pandora's box. True pandemonium incarnate, to the point where even normal Pokemon will start going crazy and attacking us, which is kind of cool too, since this is what the old verses warn us about to some degree. A world where humans and Pokemon are unable to get along is a world where everything falls apart and humanity will eventually be wiped out. All that will be left is a world for Pokemon then, which is not what Arceus' true original intent was, which is why it granted the noble Pokemon to Hisui and maybe even other regions, which actually would be really cool to find out if it did. Actually, Giratina wouldn't just stop at one world, but would likely attack other universes too, so that's pretty rough. And it might be one of the only 2 or 3 Pokemon capable of overthrowing the original one, if you'd like to believe that. Otherwise, it just stops at being a multiversal threat. In opposite to this, Heatran is actually a bit underwhelming. It really only bears control over a single volcano, but there are multiple of them. Theoretically, there should be one Heatran in every single volcano, so this might just be as simple as all of these magma frogs nodding to each other and blotting out the sun with soot and ash from simultaneous explosions from volcanoes, which would once again be very similar to the end of the dinosaurs and maybe even bring about a new ice age, if not at least a strong climate shift in multiple regions throughout the world. I'm not really sure what Cresselia would do to us or the world or anything for that matter. It's a Pokemon that grants blessings and serves as the opposite to Darkrai. What's it gonna do? Put on makeup to look like Darkrai and stare at us from down an alleyway? There are people who wanted Cresselia since it does bear dominion over dreams to some capacity, so maybe it would use the dream world against us or trap us inside of good dreams, which actually would be pretty dope. Hit us with a little bit of One Piece Red. Trap all living beings in dreams and watch as everyone who Cresselia deems as unworthy drifts off from a peaceful slumber to eternal rest. As a side, I do love the concept of dreams and our world merging with one another, alternate universes that even just seem like dreams, get into all Lovecraftian horror concepts while we're at it, cognito hazards, everything. I love horror, and I just do not talk about it enough, because it's my non-YouTube enjoyment, something that is as far separated from this stuff as possible, so that way I can shut off my brain a little bit, even though I really love doing this. It's just a healthy thing to have for anybody who's looking to do something like this with their life, or really love their job. Speaking of horror and cognito hazards though, I should talk about Darkrai, who really showed us how bad things will get thanks to its new Mega Evolution. As it uses the subconscious of all Pokemon and humans that exist in Lumiose, people from all over the world who have come to participate in the Zia Royale, it is able to create what we called Hyperspace Lumiose. But this is no Mega Dimension, it is not hyperspace, it is simply the subconscious brought to life. And as AZ and many others ever since Generation 3 have stated, all dreams are but another reality. Again, I'm not trying to overplug myself, but I have 2 whole videos on that help explain all of it if you are curious. I'm not explaining it here. But onward with this, we learned that this Hyperspace Lumiose is unstable, but becomes more and more stable when more people become aware of it. It grows larger as well, and can randomly suck people into it, as we find out near the climax of this story. And of course, within it, we have incredibly powerful Pokemon, Mega Pokemon otherwise not seen within Kalos, but seen in other lands, memories, dreams, wishes, all being shown to us from people dead or alive, since their memories are saturated within Lumiose, and it is all just one big cognito hazard. Also, just to explain cognito hazard, it basically means if you are even aware of it, it is hazardous to life or health. If we never stopped this event, it would only grow to engulf Lumiose and potentially even the world itself, as more and more people would become aware of it at an alarming rate with news stories and more. Imagine the complete subconscious of every single Pokemon and human being used to fuel this dream world, quote unquote. Memories of every villainous team, every horrific event, every Mega Pokemon and Legendary, and all of them going rogue thanks to the sheer amount of energy that exists within this space. In other words, if Mega Darkrai wasn't stopped at this stage, then the entire world would have been doomed. It had already consumed Rayquaza amongst materializing many other Pokemon, so it was genuinely too late already. This was an event so powerful that it is confirmed that it could take quite some time before the portals stop appearing or even go away completely from around Lumiose. So who knows what sort of crazy things could still happen in the future of Lumiose. I'm really only talking about Manaphy and Phione because I have to write them off of this list. They aren't doing anything at all. The worst they can do is make any creature swap bodies with each other, which I guess I could turn my fiance into a worm and I would still love her, but like that's all I've got if we're judging them by themselves. If we judge Manaphy and Phione to their full potential, at least Manaphy, they are able to call upon other Pokemon of the oceans, and it is shown that Kyogre does come to Manaphy's aid, so we'd probably have a pretty bad time. Nothing else to say without sounding redundant, so let's move on. Shaymin is another one that takes a bit of finagling to really figure out, because all it does is fight like any other Pokemon and purify air. If it does end up in a super air-polluted location, then its Seed Flare can become so powerful that it not only creates a massive explosion that levels forests, but it can rip a hole through space-time. This is only shown to then connect to the Distortion Realm, but it is still quite a bit of a threat, but really, what will any of this do at the end of the day? Oh no! Shaymin, don't go anywhere near any of the large corporations releasing pollutants. Please don't explode near them and wipe AI data centers off the face of the earth. Where else will I get my ultra convenient $3 lemonade thanks to inflation? Sorry, $5 lemonade, $7. It just keeps going up as I keep talking. Let all the Shaymin go wild. You know, it's actually the only time in which we'd find ourselves with a cleaner world, and then the greatest threat of them being able to combust is already gone, and we can move on with our lives. The big one itself. Arceus, one of the 4 beyond multiversal reality destroyers that exist within Pokemon that I can currently think of. When it wakes up, it causes the realms of Dialga and Palkia to clash with each other, which is what set off their trio of movies as they began fighting. And it woke up just because it remembered, hey, there was someone who owes me my 3 missing plates and they attacked me. I'm gonna go erase their existence real quick. Which this then turns into one of the most one-sided battles in Pokemon history regarding legendary Pokemon. Our trio of myth appear, and they're angry until they're calmed down, and then Arceus finally appears. Our protagonists try to give back the Jewel of Life, not realizing then that it was fake, and that's when everything truly hits the fan. It starts blasting out Judgement, which, as you would have guessed, reduced everything to nothingness. Maybe not even atoms are left behind, as Arceus erases everything that its light touches. The trio of myth try their hardest to step in, but they get bodied at every single turn, which, what's hilarious, is that Palkia clearly uses what should be a Dragon-type move, and Arceus just flat out changes its type to not be affected in the slightest. Like, brother, the fairy typing doesn't even exist yet you're out here just making up new types so it doesn't take any damage whatsoever. Even in its fight within Legends Arceus, it is shown using Roar of Time and Spatial Rend, or at least a version of them alongside Draco Meteor, but the coolest of all within that fight is hearing the music glitch out as it breaks through the barrier of space and time to try and catch you off guard with a rushing strike. Fighting Arceus is as intense as it should be. It is a fight for your life, your existence, your right to exist. A fight you should not win. And by all means, there's no way that I believe we fought Arceus at its full power in that moment. At least, again, not without the power of other legendary Pokemon. The only thing that truly stopped Arceus in the movie was Dialga sending our protagonists into the past and fixing the past, so all of this is resolved in the present day. Otherwise, Arceus was ready to wipe everything clean and start over without humanity to betray it ever again. As a note, it does make an appearance in the Hoopa movie at the very end, just kind of floating there in the clouds. It feels like it might have done something to help, but we really can't confirm it at all. All I can say is that it arriving at the very end was definitely its way of saying, yeah, don't worry, this was all a lesson, and I wasn't gonna let anyone get erased since my children got enraged by this genie's powers, which again, more on that later. I also want to make very clear that sure, we do fight Pokemon in our little battles, but again, when they stop playing by the rules of the video game, they're going to wipe the floor with humanity if we don't get any help from other legendary Pokemon. It's something that's even said in the old verses, like Claw nor High nor Tail or some weird stuff, because I don't have those memorized, that man does not stand a chance against Pokemon, and that's why Arceus granted the noble Pokemon to humanity within Hisui. And Arceus itself is the prime example of f*** around and find out, by the way. Gen 5 is now here, starting with the Swords of Justice, who kinda already are rogue. While they aren't out here attacking Pokemon, they are very willing to cut humanity at the knees and put our heads on spikes. We are very much not liked by them at all. My favorite example of them, actually, is within the manga, where Keldeo is asking them, hey, we should help those humans out, right? And Cobalion advises against it, saying how horrible it is that Pokemon are just used as instruments to fight over whatever humanity believes in and nothing else. Luckily, Keldeo does see through this and can see which Pokemon are being abused and which Pokemon are genuinely enjoying themselves and the battle, are treated properly, and even though they are weaker and losing the fight slowly, they are still enjoying the fight. And so Keldeo does jump in at that moment, and the rest of the Swords of Justice kind of like sit on the background, waiting for Keldeo to return, and when it does, you know, they kind of encourage it, saying, hey, you know what, you did a good job, you made your own decision, and it worked out. I also think this one just really boils down to another human extermination plot in the making. If the 4 of these Pokemon turned evil and nothing more, they'd be at peace afterwards, as in their minds, they've erased a disease from the planet, but otherwise, life wouldn't be changed. It is, though, in scenarios like this that make me think of Pokopia or Mystery Dungeon worlds that could be born from an event like this where humanity is erased by another Pokemon for whatever reason. The 4 forces of nature, Tornadus, Thundurus, Landorus, and Enamorus, feel a bit more complicated. They are representative of storms, harvest, and then love and hate, which really is just all about competing for mates and then mating. They do have the ability to travel all around the world at great speeds, thanks to their Therian forms, but other than being another effective version of what we would see in our other storm-causing Pokemon, what would really happen with them? Well, they destroy the land itself. As it turns out, they are all about representing the heavens and the nourishing effect the sky has upon the earth itself. Then, of course, how we benefit from this. They are the connection between heaven and earth, as many of our legendary and mythical Pokemon are, but, you know, these are a little bit more directly literal. You know, they were in clouds. While I can see them just destroying everything, I can also see them no longer taking part in the weather cycle, thus causing humanity to struggle through famines until the planet is bereft of life. The only exception to this would be anywhere in which Pokemon have grouped up and kept forests or other habitats alive. Then there would only be pockets in which there are dense Pokemon populations that might even prevent humans from entering just to keep themselves safe. In another strange turn of events, Reshiram, Zekrom, and Kyurem likely wouldn't change all that much. We've already been told that Reshiram and Zekrom destroyed most of, if not all of Unova in the past, and Kyurem has made a crater and changed the environment into its own personal Antarctic home, so they're pretty independent, if not just shy of being rogue. The big difference then is how they actively decide to attack the world around them, but I can now guarantee that either Reshiram or Zekrom would actively choose to fuse with Kyurem, whichever one gets to it first, because it is confirmed that they are attracted to Kyurem's power, and then at least within the manga, we know that they have a need or desire to fuse with Kyurem. This is, of course, part of a plan or hope to return back to their true form, the original dragon. But this isn't exactly possible because there just isn't enough energy for this to be performed. Plus, it gets into a whole greater mess of theories and ideas that I'm pretty confident on, and you can check out again in my videos all about the original dragon and its connection to dreams. As for talking about them here, we've seen what Red Eyes Black Dragon and Blue Eyes White Dragon can do. What about Kyurem when it's working on its own? Well, as it turns out, its power was used to freeze all of Opelucid City and its inhabitants, and it had so much energy that it could fully charge the ship, and then when it left the ship, it just had no issues whatsoever with fighting or anything else. Once again, in the manga, this is taken a heck of a lot further in a terrifying way, as Chorus is like, yeah, let's just keep going, shall we, Gutsus? And they continue freezing more and more cities in their reign of terror. While again, this is a Chorus machine, it is also again fueled purely by the power of Kyurem, meaning that if Kyurem really wants to, it could likely freeze entire regions one by one, creating its own Great Ice Age. And while that's happening, we'd see both Reshiram and Zekrom causing the other parts of the world to be destroyed in a storm of fire and lightning, their powers of Fusion Bolt and Fusion Flare only making each other stronger with every attack until they are truly unstoppable. While I'm sure they're pretty intense threats on their own, it felt fair to also include the entire trio as their own entry, because that's the whole point of these Pokemon existing in the first place. A world burned to ashes, then frozen in time until they decide they're ready to restore life to the planet, or just fuse and destroy things even faster. Surprisingly, Victini will not do all that much. Sure, it has an incredible amount of energy and an incredibly powerful move, but its entire purpose is to give energy to others more than it is to use the power itself. Whereas it gets tired or can be defeated, it's shown that if it grants energy to others, then they are assured victory in anything that they do. If we have fun with this and say that it can use that power on itself, or better yet, choose a champion for itself to gift that power to constantly, then yeah, Victini solos the universe by the standards of its own powers, and there's literally nothing that anyone can do to stop it. Attach a Victini to a Giratina and watch as all of existence gets destroyed and rewritten. I just smacked my water bottle. Attach it to a Mew and watch as we have multiplied infinity by infinity and shatter the laws of the world to the point where Arceus questions why it made Victini in the first place, which, as a side, I think it's incredibly cool to see more minor concepts and ideas represented by effective gods of the Pokemon world. They already draw so much info from Shinto belief, Greek myth, and so much more, so why not have a tried and true massive pantheon where every single concept has a god or Pokemon in general to represent it? This is me saying that there could be spirits representing a number of other positive and negative concepts, and just see where it all goes, which if you wanted a God of War Pokemon, then at least in one of these scrapped Sinnoh myths, Giratina was that God of War, which would have explained why it's such an angry and terrifying Pokemon. Meloetta can't really do much to my understanding, although it is said without it and its song, then all joy will leave this world, so maybe we could go with that. We all get depression. I would get into the whole anime-only concept of it being used to control the original 3 forces of nature, but that is a whole different ball game that I do not want to get into today. I'll worry about that when I finally make a video dedicated to these guys. For now, just put in earplugs and Meloetta isn't going to be doing much, I guess. The revived Pokemon of Team Plasma, Genesect. And if we would like to go by the movies, then it is a Pokemon that can rival Mega Mewtwo Y, which is incredibly impressive. Or at the very least, the leader of the Genesect could do so, who can also then take control of the others, does have the capacity to rival Mega Mewtwo Y. So there goes your power scaling, because the only way that Mewtwo even succeeded, by the way, is because it dragged Genesect into space, where it could no longer function, and then Mewtwo saved the red leader robot. Also, apparently, Mewtwo had just freshly learned how to Mega Evolve, so it hadn't the full skill of that capacity. I'm not rewording that sentence. It has plenty of energy within it. They have the Techno Drives, which are pretty powerful themselves, and they would start making nests in generators to absorb even more power while making a base for themselves. This turns into another lose-lose situation, as the longer they go without being stopped, the more powerful Genesect might be able to become. I will at least say that I don't think a singular Genesect by itself could take over the world or anything, but a group of them do serve as a pretty big threat overall. But if they're left to their own devices, even with going rogue, they seem more interested in just making a home for themselves in the modern day to represent their old home from when they were alive during the Carboniferous period, so not much of a threat if we just isolate them and not let anyone else go to their chosen habitat. Now that I think about it, I don't think they can breed. Of course, they mechanically can't in the games, but I have no idea if they would be able to do so lore-wise. It's not explored in any of the mediums to my knowledge, but knowing Team Plasma, they would have found a way to make sure they had some way to replicate them. Otherwise, the nests feel a bit extra. Xerneas is the trickiest of the Aura trio to figure out the damage that it would cause, but it actually wouldn't directly cause any damage on its own. From what we see in Legends ZA, its mere presence causes very abnormal and powerful alpha Pokemon to appear in habitats they otherwise wouldn't appear in. A Steelix, a Gallade, and a Pangoro all suddenly appearing as Mabel tells us to go handle them and then go take down the Rainbow Deer. If left unchecked, then the entire city would run amok with an incredible number of alpha Pokemon of all kinds, putting everyone and everything in danger all over again, just like with what happened with Anj. But I think it could go much further than that, because we know that Xerneas' energy alongside of Veltal was used to power the ultimate weapon, and it is through this power of life energy that Mega Stones were created. In addition, in the Dialga movie, we get to watch Xerneas grant Dialga her Mega form, meaning Xerneas can just create an army of Mega Pokemon to fight on its behalf alongside an army of Alpha Pokemon Super Soldiers, all of them organized without actually being rogue, which makes it all that much more dangerous. I'm also pretty sure that all the life energy being poured into Pokemon would allow them to evolve early, so it just gets worse and worse the more we look at this if we aren't just making new Mega Pokemon left, right, and center. It is one of the few Pokemon who can amass an army on its own and bring down the hammer onto anything that dares oppose it, and yet it just doesn't bother to do so at any point in time whatsoever. I guess being the spirit that represents life itself comes with the downside of not really taking part in life or fights unless it has no choice. Its counterpart Yveltal is pretty cut and dry, but still incredibly scary. It is one of the only Pokemon that can't technically be defeated. As Grisham and Grisel state, Yveltal in its dormant form had taken out multiple squadrons of Team Flare, and it took sending in their elites to properly defeat and capture it. When it arrived in Lumiose, we're told by Vinny that we absolutely must capture it. Any other route would result in potential catastrophe or effectively be useless, all because Yveltal can just revitalize itself by taking life energy from everything around it. You defeated it? Congratulations! You and everything within a 1,000 foot radius instantly have your life energy stolen away from you. Humans, Pokemon, trees, grass, literally anything that holds any life within it is drained of it and now is turned to stone. On top of that, within the Dynasty movie, we do see it flying around in the air, shooting massive laser beams all over the place that immediately turn you into stone. So once it does enter a rampage, it could just stay well out of our reach, and boom, we're dead. Fighting Yveltal is a lose-lose situation if you don't catch it in a Pokeball or have Xerneas there to calm it down and tell it to get its act together. So I'd imagine that without Xerneas or Zygarde intervening for whatever made-up scenario we have here, it would only be a matter of time before the entirety of the planet's life force is absorbed into Yveltal and is lights out until Yveltal returns that energy back to the planet, assuming it can do so without Xerneas, which I don't really know if it can. It's big boy Zygarde's turn to take the wheel and do the absolute opposite of what its purpose is, and that is to go rogue and destroy the planet rather than protect it, the ecosystem, and the life cycle. It already can put a stop to Xerneas and Yveltal thanks to its own ability, but then we look at its 100% form. This creature is not absolute in its power. It does need to have the energy to maintain the form to begin with, but once it does transform, it's been shown to go toe-to-toe with Ultra Necrozma in the manga at 100%. Fight Ultra Beasts, saved all the residents within range of the ultimate weapon at its 10% form when Lysander fired it, and when the people of Lumiose needed it most, we were able to help it Mega Evolve and use Nihil Light. This then leads me to the greatest danger to Zygarde, adaptation. To meme it up a little bit, Zygarde is the Maharaja of Pokemon. It is built to adapt, but might take a bit longer to do so. The positive side is that Zygarde absorbs anything found in nature into its body. For example, Nihil Light is a base 200 power move, whose name is a counter to the light that burns the sky, which is Ultra Necrozma's signature move, and with L's confirmation, we understand that this is a Z move used by Zygarde in its Mega form. This means that all of the energy that exists in Alola and has become a part of its nature was also absorbed and naturalized within Zygarde, allowing it to use that power itself while being outside of Alola. Now imagine what it could do if it went to any of our other regions, if it took the time to absorb Galar Particles and Terrestrial Energy or any form of legendary energy that exists or ever will exist. Through this ability to adapt, absorb, and then utilize these powers, Zygarde effectively becomes an impossible to defeat Pokemon if you don't have an incredible amount of preparation at this point. It's actually a bit wild then to consider that Zygarde was so closely involved with Lumiose and all the Mega energy, yet it had never gone rogue itself. It never was even at risk of doing so. It just kept gathering cells and preparing for its final battle within Lumiose against Anj, because it is able to adapt to anything. I was also probably a bit dramatic earlier with saying it would destroy the planet, when in reality there would likely be a point where it would see what humanity is doing and say, no. We're putting an end to all this AI data center stuff, all this AI generated stuff, goodbye, and just nuke it all to oblivion. And then it might continue from there, using 1,000 waves and arrows, Land's Wrath, and Core Enforcer to evaporate everything that it touches. Are you in the air? 1,000 arrows. On the ground now, 1,000 waves to trap you. Then Land's Wrath, which is literally the energy of the earth itself destroying you. And if you're stubborn enough to stay alive to this point, then Core Enforcer, or Core Punisher as it's directly named, will not only carve out a massive Z through intense energy and cause a massive explosion, but it will also lock away the target's abilities completely. Zygarde has taken away your ability to bend, Ozai, but unlike Aang, it isn't going to stop there and it will kill you without a doubt. While I strongly believe Zygarde could destroy the planet, it likely wouldn't. And no, we aren't going to say it turns into Guzzlord, because as we know it, that theory is null and void. Especially as we look at the manga where Zygarde went to Alola to get energy, but also found itself there because it sensed the Ultra Beasts, prepared to fight them. This then just means that Zygarde and Guzzlord served as foils to each other, and that's why they are designed to reflect each other. But at the very least, we'd have an impossible to stop threat with Zygarde. Though with all the adaptive abilities, I wonder if we could toss Zygarde into Arceus realm or any other godly Pokemon's realm and see if it would eventually gain all of their powers as well. Just a thought. Diancie is nice and simple at least, and if it really went crazy, it would just start by destroying the Crystal Kingdom that it holds dear first and foremost. After that, it really doesn't do that much on a much grander scale. Like, sure, it stood up to Yveltal, but that was just for a moment to protect others. For this Pokemon, the only real fear might be that she is able to create diamonds out of thin air, and while most shots show her compressing air between her hands to do so, within her Mega form, that isn't 100% necessary from the looks of it. So, you know, say goodbye to the air in your lungs, as they're filled with highly valuable diamonds next. And those diamonds don't stick around forever, by the way, so they would appear, fill your lungs, and then as they disappear, you better hope you've already died, because oh boy, that's gonna hurt. Chalk Diancie as a Pokemon similar to the Airbenders in that capacity. They could just take the air from your lungs or explode your lungs, but they don't, because they're peaceful people. I guess when you have an incredible power and realize you could destroy everyone, but that's not the right thing to do, you just don't do it. So thanks, Diancie, for not making my lungs feel like $1,000,000. Oh boy, here we go. Okay, arguably one of the most dangerous Pokemon of all time when it comes to finding out what would happen if they went rogue. And unlike in the Hoopa movie, where we'd have another Hoopa there to summon normal legendary Pokemon, we're on our own out here. To explain, the power of Hoopa is bound within the prison bottle, and over many years that energy gains its own sentience, becoming enraged over its entrapment, and it then becomes evil. This only happened because Hoopa in the first place used its powers to impress people and kept creating greater and greater feats for itself to overcome, and oh boy, did it overcome them. It was summoning multiple legendary Pokemon at once, even simultaneously defeating Regigigas, Zekrom, and Reshiram as part of this. They weren't injured either, by the way. They were full bore, ready to fight, and definitely upset over Hoopa's antics. It meant no harm in that moment. It just wanted to prove how powerful it was until, yeah, it started destroying villages. Not so innocent anymore. In the modern day, that energy breaks out and is even more powerful, having rested for so long and built up its power, now summoning multiple legendary Pokemon like Primal Kyogre and Groudon, Dialga, Palkia, even Kyurem joined the fray thanks to its summoning. Although an important detail is that Hoopa is not really controlling any of them. They're all kind of corrupted and enraged and have been given a target to take their ire out on, and it gets really bad, to say the very least. Lugia, Rayquaza, Latios, and Latias all have to be summoned to help out, and all of them, except for Lugia of course, do Mega Evolve while everyone is preoccupied. Evil Hoopa Unbound, just using its rings to teleport its own fists to trap and punch Ash, and so much more. So like, no matter how far you are or where you are, Hoopa can still get to you if it wants to. Also, I would not be surprised, now that we can see multiple Hoopa can exist in the same instance thanks to ZA, if Hoopa would summon more of itself and multiply just how bad things would get. Probably exponentially, really. The only way that it can be stopped is by remaking the prison bottle and using it on Hoopa, but that's assuming it doesn't just crush you between its fingers instantly or cause a massive storm to blow absolutely everything away. In the end, Hoopa's own hubris and the knowledge of the prison bottle are the only things that can stop it. Although, if we were helped at all, we at least know that Arceus would appear at the very end, since it did so again within that movie. So even though Dialga and Palkia were dragged into this, it seems like Arceus just kind of decided to take its sweet time to arrive, and could have put an end to everything if it really needed to. It's also interesting that we are missing Ho-Oh, considering the rest of their legendary counterparts are here. Of course, like, no mythicals other than Hoopa are in this movie, but that might just all be something I have to look into in the future whenever I finally commit to a Hoopa video. Also, if it wasn't clear, Hoopa Unbound is one of the other top tier multiversal or even existence ending Pokemon, especially with Dialga and Palkia relatively under its thumb and rampaging. Ignore the fact that when I wrote this script, I wasn't reviewing footage, and I completely forgot to mention that Giratina was there too, so there you go, audio-only listeners. Scaling it back, Volcanon isn't the end of the world, but it would definitely put an end to the human race, as it hates all humans already, and thanks to the information we know, the reason is as follows. Volcanion was likely used by humans forced under their control for something we know for a fact it did, which was blow up an entire mountain in Kalos. But it didn't quite just blow it up, in fact it is praised for creating Southern Kalos by the people who live there. So when we look at the facts and piece them together, we find out that it didn't just blow up the mountain, it blew the entire top portion off and it landed in the water to then create Southern Kalos. And considering the massive explosion it lets out in the Megearna movie, I have no doubts that Volcanion just needs enough water between cities and regions and could easily turn our planet into a crater-filled mess of destruction. Eventually, all the water would return, but human civilization would be absolutely ruined, and that's really all that would happen until nature recovers and Volcanion smiles to itself knowing there aren't any humans left to cause problems. I'm not 100% sure what the absolute limits of Sil Valley are. Sure, it was built to literally kill Ultra Beasts as it was part of the Beast Killer project, but outside of that, it already rampaged at the beginning when they first made it. And even though the scientists that created it are directly stated to have abused it, thanks to info from Pokemon Masters, which I have to let you know that info from Masters is canon, but events in it aren't, gets complicated. Those same scientists that created Sil Valley were able to then contain it fairly easily, turning it into type null, so pretty open and shut case, not that much of a threat. I, though, pity the universe where the 4 Tapus decide they're done with humanity. They would never destroy nature because that's where they derive their power from, but they absolutely would strike down all humans they felt were spoiling their land, seas, and skies. In fact, they've already done this. There was an entire War of Alola that I did cover alongside Amaze Dragon, which was really fun. But it was in this war that Tapu Village was destroyed, the monarchy was crumpled, and the evil kahuna was smited down? One of those. Then leading to the remnants of people never fully inhabiting Tapu Village ever again, the Mega Mart being left to rot, and those spare members under that kahuna to be the founders of Team Skull. All wild stuff, and the Tapus were not playing around back then, nor do they play around now. They are both revered and feared. From my understanding, the healthier nature is, the stronger they are able to become. Their signature moves are Nature's Madness, which, their ability, and Guardian of Alola, after all, which of course are derived from the power of nature itself. I will say my favorite depiction of the Z move, Guardian of Alola, is absolutely within the animated series in that grand, beautiful finale between Kukui and Ash, and it just really puts into perspective just how intensely massive the Tapus become when they unleash this move. Even without that power, all 4 of the Tapus are a massive threat with immense power. Tapu Koko is incredibly fast and just loves to fight in the first place. Tapu Lele can use the scales she releases to heal the others and anyone else on their side. Tapu Bulu will swing and throw entire trees, and Tapu Fini uses psychological war tactics, making us see our dead loved ones and trapping us in a fog until we die while controlling the water as an added bit. Cool. Waterbender, showing us the afterlife. In other words, if the Tapus want us gone from Alola, we don't stand a chance. If they're able to tap into the power of nature in other regions and fight their largest fights without Z moves, then I'm sure they could just take over just about any other region. It does make me wonder though if their typings would change, or how their powers would change if they settled into new lands. There's also only one other really weird detail to talk about, where in the anime, Tapu Koko from 2 different realities seem to cooperate with each other and use their powers to bring Ash and Pikachu to the alternate reality of Melee Melee, the Ultra Ruin. So, could that mean that the Tapus can just work like Celebi? I'm not really sure, but if that's the case, then these Tapus going evil would be a lot worse. Of course, Cosmog and Cosmoem aren't really going to do anything at all. If Cosmog even tries to do anything, it tuckers itself out and might even die from overexertion. But of course, Solgaleo and Lunala are a bit of a different story. They are incredibly powerful and even fast, but their real abilities lie within the infinite amount of sunlight and moonlight that they release from their bodies. Sunlight is a big no-duh on how bad that could be, just giving cancer to everyone or flat out burning them alive. Even if it doesn't do that, then it can just make it seem like daytime all the time until we mentally break from lack of darkness, or everything dries out, I don't know. Again, also those that aren't used to constant sunlight would break while other places would probably be fine. For Lunala, the moonlight it just shoots out is just as dangerous. So say hello to moon cancer, moonburns, and the world of absolute darkness only lit by Lunala's moonlight. And here's the kicker. Because while this all seems pretty tame, Solgaleo and Lunala as a duo took down all 4 of the Tapus with ease, and then granted the Tapus Z crystals, and then dropped off Cosmog to say, go ahead, take care of our kid, do something stupid and we'll be back. So despite the lack of any massively world-bending abilities, they did bop the Tapus. Oh, and they can open up Ultra Wormhole, so I guess they do have a literal universe-bending ability and could probably summon Ultra Beast if they really, really wanted to. And that itself is world-ending as we know it. Speaking of opening up wormholes, we can talk about Necrozma and Ultra Necrozma as if they were two separate creatures, because they really would function differently overall. For the corrupted and broken form of Necrozma, we already know that it would travel across the universe or multiple universes in search of light to absorb. The more it absorbs, the closer it gets to restoring its true form, and can return to its true quote-unquote Ultra form. It also seeks out Solgaleo and Lunala, and by fusing with either of them, it then results in Necrozma in Dawn or Duskwing's form to go absolutely ballistic. This is because it actually can't handle the power, it's far too much. And while that sounds backwards, it's because Necrozma isn't supposed to fill its body with purely sunlight or purely moonlight. It needs a proper balance of both within its body. This is why we need both of them to fuse with Necrozma to help it reach its Ultra form, which is still actually wrong. Because the only reason that happens is because Colress walks in and quote-unquote helps us by forcing them to fuse with each other. Instead, as expressed through interviews and the anime, the only way to restore Necrozma to its Ultra form properly is by filling it with light from both of their attacks alongside a boatload of Z-power directed at it. But in between now and then, Necrozma will steal the light from everywhere, leaving entire worlds in complete darkness as it did Ultra Megalopolis, forcing them to physically adapt to a world without light. And as we see in the climactic moments of Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, Necrozma opens up a wormhole, spits out Lusamine and Guzma, and then opens wormholes all across Alola, summoning Ultra Beasts who are just as scared as we are, choosing fight over flight. It even manages to do this in Galar, and thanks to the Galar particles and max raid dens, things get pretty bad over there too. But once it does reach the power of Ultra Necrozma, we have a bit of a different problem on our hands. In the anime, we're shown that everything is just fine and Ultra Necrozma is stable and happy. Meanwhile, in the games, we're shown the form of Ultra Necrozma that has somehow obtained its Ultra form without both Solgaleo and Lunala, but only one of them and having done something else. It likely absorbed a ton of light from other places and will continue to do so until we stop it with this boss fight, or it absorbed enough light from Solgaleo or Lunala to become its Ultra form, and that's why it continues to be berserk, because it's still not balanced. So as a part of all of this, sure, it's a scary fight in the games, but outside of the games, it can be far more terrifying. Just to be to the point and concise regarding just how absolutely we would be if Ultra Necrozma actually rampaged, I'm just going to read off the next info. Necrozma is at its full power in this form, radiating energy that has all sorts of effects on living things and even nature itself. Its body temperature exceeds 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit, 5,540 Celsius, which is just as hot as the surface of the sun, by the way. Anything that it touches will melt from the extreme heat. It can fire laser beams from every part of its body, burning through everything in its path over 18 miles away. While swinging its four wings around, Ultra Necrozma uses its superheated claws to tear its opponents to shreds. I want you to know that we would be fighting the power of the sun itself, not just sunlight or whatever else Solgaleo has going on. There is a 0% chance of anyone properly defeating a full-powered Ultra Necrozma, and we're lucky it didn't hit us with one of those beams of light in the Ultra Moon and Sun finale. It's hard to say for sure that Ultra Necrozma could shatter all of reality itself, but considering it can travel between universes, steal more and more light, gather theoretical infinite amounts of energy, and the original Arceus seems to be composed of pure light, there seems to be a chance that Ultra Necrozma could legitimately dethrone the one true Arceus and upend all of reality. So that's cool. If you thought we'd fly over Magearna without a problem, I want you to recognize that Magearna's soul heart and overall power is the key to a massive flying war machine in the movies that is made up of an entire kingdom. And even when it isn't being used to fuel the flying war kingdom, it does have the capacity to Mega Evolve, which really isn't Mega Evolving. Instead, it just unleashes its true form, which is a weapon, while locking away its emotions, and it puts its Fleur Cannon on display, ready to blast things into oblivion. I guarantee that if it is able to fuel a flying war machine that could destroy entire regions, that the Fleur Cannon is just as, if not more, dangerous. Kinda makes me imagine Magearna as the gun devil, just pointing in a direction, firing, and then everything in a multi-hundred-mile line is just decimated into nothingness. It wouldn't be invincible, but would be horrifying to witness the absolute destruction that it would cause to the world all around it in the meantime, with everything getting caught in the crossfire. If we're able to put a stop to Marshadow early on, then there's not too much to worry about. I will say that even within its movie, it really doesn't seem to do all that much. It appears, helps serve as an antagonist when corrupted by Ho-Oh's ruined feather, and then when it's knocked out of Marshadow's hand, it kind of just goes back to normal and disappears. There's no major feats that were shown, but at least within the Pokédex, we learn that it's able to learn anything from sitting in the shadow of another person, and then it's able to master that skill to a higher degree. So maybe with enough time, it could be a problem. Otherwise, I don't think I'm very concerned about the planets or anything here. Zorora, though, is a much greater threat, being known as the fastest known Pokemon with a top speed of 720,000 miles per hour, which is 1,158,727.68 kilometers per hour, or Mach 938.39. This is genuinely such an incredible speed, all while not even being in its mega form, mind you. The sonic booms it would release from moving so fast would probably cause immense damage, alongside anything being dragged in from the sheer force of displacement. I'm not even going to bother with figuring out the science of that right now. But to add to this, Zorora doesn't store electricity within its body. It only draws electricity from the area around it using electromagnetism, which in turn would fry every electronic that Zorora goes anywhere near. You might think that any electric Pokemon would fry electronics, but that's not the case, as we see plenty of them coexisting within labs and similar environments. And I tapped my keyboard and I don't think anything happened. We're good. Zorora is also a Pokemon that is depicted to do everything it can to protect the environment. So just like many of our human-hating Pokemon, it might not destroy anything but humanity. Even though, for clarification, Zorora does not dislike humanity, it was just mistreated and wrongly accused of causing destruction when it was in fact saving people in Pokemon, and it's kind of nervous and doesn't quite trust humanity. Outside of a number of localized mass destructions, I don't think Zorora would really destroy everything. It would likely just isolate itself at some point and keep others from getting close to its habitat. We know that Melmetal was once worshipped by an ancient civilization in an unnamed region. It's also suspected that its G-Max form is its real 100% form and not just a random G-Max. The flow of liquid in its body helps it generate electricity, basically meaning that there are multiple metals composing this Pokemon and trading electrons, which then is used to create a beam that vaporizes not only its enemies, but entire hills, apparently. This is an 82-foot-tall metal Pokemon golem shooting beams of electricity that vaporizes landscapes. Yeah, I'm not messing with that. Here I was thinking we were getting off easy for the most part here on in, and here I am being proven wrong, as this is just a weaker version of Ultra Necrozma shooting beams all over the place. I'd imagine that there'd be a ton of heat generated as well, which explains the vaporization, but there's definitely going to be a range of area around the laser that would still be deemed deadly and might be hot enough to evaporate water in, like, I don't know, a 30, 50, 60-foot area, probably a lot wider. In other words, even if we do survive or dodge the attack, G-Max Melmetal will cause some irreversible damage, if not still kill us. The Fairy King's Sword and the Fighting Master's Shield, Zacian and Zamazenta. They're pretty incredibly powerful, but all they're doing is outputting some strong power and flying, because apparently they can do that. I heavily doubt there'd be any issue with them outside of Galar, since they only seem to care about that region. I'm a bit stumped beyond them running around and absolutely demolishing human settlements until there's nothing left. They do kind of just rest within the slumbering woods peacefully, so maybe they would work towards turning the entire region into something like that, and then finally rest once they do within a field of flowers. They just both seem to be the type to, like, just do exactly that, and real talk, I'm down for that if I were them. The true problem of Galar, compared to the rest, is in fact not just Eternatus, but its full-powered form Eternamax. It did not cause one, but two entire cataclysmic events through the darkest day, and I would argue that this would become a worldwide disaster. Because of all the Galar particles it releases, Eternamax and its energy forces Pokemon to Dynamax and Rampage. Very few Pokemon seem to be able to resist this, but even Zacian and Zamazenta are noted to go berserk if absolutely bombarded by this energy. In other words, every single Pokemon has a limit as to what they can handle before going rogue. This takes our issue with every Pokemon we've talked about so far and multiplies it 100-fold, because we theoretically could just say that instead of not including help from every legendary and mythical Pokemon, we just watch as Eternamax causes all of our other legendary and mythical Pokemon to go berserk while spreading Galar particles across the world and beyond. After all, we see them in the max raid dens for a reason. To clarify though, Eternatus isn't even from our planet. It crash-landed here forever ago, and its energy has radiated into Galar ever since. But if we were to get that disaster to escape Galar, then it could get much worse, on top of summoning legendary and mythical Pokemon and Ultra Beasts from all sorts of different realities. We even get to see then, speaking of, how space and potentially even time itself is warped by its immense power by looking at the warbling imagery of Galar appearing all around it during our fight, not just with max raid dens. And if you could somehow keep your Pokemon under control and try to Dynamax or Gmax your Pokemon, it could just stop that altogether and force other Pokemon to Dynamax instead with a good old-fashioned laser beam. If we want to take the manga into account, then the poison of Eternatus even affects us as humans, changing our behavior for the worse as we become violent and selfish. So there might even be a point where its influence just causes the entire world to eat itself alive and probably implodes from all the intense fighting, while Eternamax just goes to a different planet. Great times, right? Another more localized Pokemon would be Urshifu, who are powerful enough to take on multiple legendary Pokemon, such as the Regis as shown through the anime. They were also Pokemon that helped fight Eternamax in the original Darkest Day, and they are considered fighting masters in their rapid and single strike styles. Despite all of that, it just feels like it would be either an isolated event or twin Urshifu running across the water from region to region, taking them all down one by one. Maybe we could just have fun with this and say that since they both banish evil from within the souls of those that they fight, they punch evil into the souls, or I don't know, something else stupid. I can at least tell you this though, they'd be very similar to every rival or antagonist that only thinks about getting stronger and stops at nothing until they've defeated everyone and everything. So basically just another Mewtwo situation, but on a less devastating level. They really only become part of the greater issue thanks to the Eternatus scenario. Calyrex is getting paired with Glastrier and Spectrier because those horses were already going rogue, and we know that wasn't the end of the world. But Calyrex going rogue would actually be incredibly horrifying. Not only can it Gmax all on its own without, Dynamax, all on its own without Eternatus' power, but it's a Pokemon that as long as it is worshipped, it becomes even more powerful. Sure, it is supposed to use that power to grow plants en masse and then cause them to bloom, encouraging life to flourish all around it, but it is noted to have an incredible capacity for destruction. In fact, it has a number of abilities that would make it nearly impossible to defeat. It once ruled all of Galar, it can take control of others' bodies even while it's weakened, it is incredibly intelligent, being able to speak and understand human speech, it can see the past, present, and future of any kind as well. Do you realize how broken that is? Not just being able to see the past, present, and future, it can see any kind of those realities, meaning its psychic power allows it to at least imagine, if not full-on see, alternate realities to our own and be able to take the best route for success. It can see the past of others, allowing it to be fully aware of what has ever happened, how humanity moved to defeat other Pokemon, everything. It would effectively be impossible to surprise Calyrex, and it would always be 100% prepared. It has used its powers to move an entire forest, and once again, the more it is worshipped, the more powerful it could become. So as opposed to every single other legendary and mythical here that might wipe out humanity and Pokemon, Calyrex would likely be a Pokemon that becomes some sort of edgy Dark Lord above all life on the planet. And with the entire world being aware and being forced to worship its immense power, I can only imagine just how much more powerful it could become. Kinda makes me wonder then if it would fly off to other planets and try to take them over. Druid is hyper-localized and already is incredibly aggressive. They aren't really known to have any incredible power, and there's entire colonies of them, and they really haven't done anything other than stay inside of their jungles with no crazy feats, so I'm just gonna quickly move on. We've reached the final region, and we open up with the Pokemon sealed behind closed doors, the Ruinous Quartet. They are literally called ruinous for a reason. Their mere existence is a hazard for all life everywhere. Chien-Pao causes avalanches constantly, Ting-Lu can just lower its head and cause massive earthquakes, while Chien constantly drains life from all plants' life around it, and Chi-Yu exerts so much heat that it will literally melt anything and everything on our planet into lava as it touches it. They are genuinely disastrous calamities, which, to be fair, their direct Japanese title is Treasures of Calamity. Calamity Ganon, eat your heart out. The four of these Pokemon would eventually put an end to all life, region by region, passively. And considering that they were brought to life, or at least awakened, by the greed of mankind, I have a feeling they'll just become more powerful as they visit certain locations. This wouldn't be the world going out with a bang, it would be a slow and arduous whimper where even Pokemon would be greatly affected.
World-ending level? To some degree, sure, but hopefully we get to see them animated at some point so we can know the full limit of their power like we have with the rest. Because there's so many Pokemon like Celebi, as we've seen, who are far more powerful than were ever shown in the games, and I'd be terrified of what these 4 could do when not restricted to small dex entries and turn-based fighting. Very little is technically still known about Koraidon and Miraidon, and just how destructive they can be. Sure, we have Pokédex rumors that state Koraidon split the land with its bare fists and how Miraidon turned the land to ash, but that's just about it. Even the more aggressive versions that we came across in Area 0 had only ever just killed Professor Turo or Sada and did nothing else. Didn't escape, didn't attack anything else, or just didn't have the chance to. Just kind of got thrown into a Pokeball, and then when we found it again, it fought us, so you know, pretty tame by comparison and nothing else to say here. Another cut and dry entry, Petrunt and the Loyal 3 really aren't a proper threat at all. Sure, Petrunt was slowly taking over Kitakami with its Mochi, but at the same time, that was one event out of many different opportunities where it could have done the same. And the Loyal 3 aren't doing anything else without Petrunt, so they're staying under its thumb and they'll all work together. I think the worst case scenario is that Petrunt would take over anyone and anything that would serve as a threat to stop it from getting what it wants, but wouldn't aim to take over the entire world. Even if it did, there's a lot of trainers with strong personalities like Nemona who wouldn't be entirely under the control of Petrunt, so I'd imagine someone would eventually break out. Either that or Petrunt would be constantly praised by everyone all the time like it really wants. I would be far more scared if Ogerpon, with the power of all of its masks, decided to go rogue, because when it only had one mask and it was purely a grass type, it took down the Loyal 3 and Petrunt alone. Mind you, again, it is a grass type Pokemon and they are all poison types in part. It was strong enough to overpower Okidogi, fast enough to beat Munkidori's ability to see the future, and mobile enough to avoid Pheasantipity and strike it down from the sky. This is no easy feat, and then it just vibed for years afterwards enjoying the festival in secret. This is not to say Ogerpon would destroy the world or anything, it would simply take up the mantle of being one of the demons that it is inspired by within the tale of Momotaro. It would cause havoc, destruction, terrorizing the people of Kitakami, and rule over them as the demons were apt to do until one day she would be stopped. It wouldn't be an easy fight, but it is a classic tale. Our semi-finale is Terrapagos, a Pokemon that would likely destroy the entirety of Paldea when it enters its Stella Terra form the first time. It is the source of the terrestrial phenomenon, and what makes it scary is that it is able to absorb energy from all crystals across Paldea, and as it draws in that energy, we see the sheer amount of pressure displacement almost dragging in our main characters within the games, and luckily we were able to stop it in that moment. If we couldn't, oh boy, it's gonna get rough. Because due to having so much power, Stellar form Terrapagos may actually cause cracks around it during its transformation and even risks wreaking havoc to Paldea's entire ecosystem, and not even a Master Ball can contain it. The hidden powers within Stellar form Terrapagos are capable of reducing to 0 all effects of weather and terrain. Basically, anything that terrestrializes is also going to have a bad time against it, as it just absorbs that energy away from them while it resists damage to a degree from all different types, even if momentarily or only once. It would be isolated to this singular region, but Paldea would be absolutely decimated without a doubt. What would that look like, you ask? Well, we already know that Terrapagos' crystals are the reason why Toro and Sada could bring Paradox Pokemon to the present day. But these crystals also power a number of different Pokemon throughout the region and create hierarchies of colonies who have managed to stay in power because of terrestrialization. Also, in the most basic sense, these crystals likely make up the bedrock of Paldea, and if you remove that or cause big fissures to appear all over the place, then we're gonna have a big problem. Not even to talk about all the different Pokemon that would panic, causing their own form of destruction in the process. All while Terrapagos becomes stronger and stronger as it steals back all the power that it is gifted to the entire region for hundreds of thousands of years. But our finale is a Pokemon I don't talk enough about, Eternal Floette. A Pokemon that is incredibly intelligent and incredibly powerful, as we see in Legends ZA. I mean, right off the bat, we see it nearly erase a group of children and their Pokemon as just an intimidation tactic. Then add in the fact that it is a regulator for Anj, which is supposed to keep all of Kalos safe by distributing life energy back to its people if a great tragedy were to happen. But instead of gifting that energy, we watch as Anj gifts it very aggressively as it turns into a massive bioweapon, sprouting these same colored flowers that parallel not only Eternal Floette, but in turn then also paralleling Xerneas and Yveltal, which gets a little weird, but Anj is definitely just nature itself, like plants and, all that stuff, taking in all the energy that had flowed into it instead of into Pokemon and coming to life, because Eternal Floette itself was still fine according to Tani, but yet this thing was Hyper Rogue, Ange Floette, so it's a little bit complicated. By those standards, at least, we've technically seen it go rogue and with an incredible amount of power to boot, but it didn't do so on purpose. Imagine if it actively did so, actively absorbed energy and wasn't acting completely out of instinct or in a frenzy. The intelligence of our normal Eternal Floette mixed with the power of Ange to create a bioweapon unlike any other that can take or give life to anyone it pleases. A terror unlike any other that would wipe out entire cities to nothing but ash without the help of Mega Zygarde. Kind of dark this entire video technically was, but also it's really fun to look at these alternative scenarios where we get no help from legendary Pokemon and we watch as instead they completely turn against us. But with that then, that is the end of today's video. If you've enjoyed it and are new here, subscribe, as I'm sure you will love everything else this channel has to offer. Also want to thank members of the channel as you see them going on screen now. Their support ensures I can deep dive into plenty of topics and bring everyone quality content. If you want behind the scenes info, early access to videos, and members exclusive videos like this list, which will have a new video all about what my teams would be if I was a gym leader of every type, then become a member for as little as $3 a month. I'll actually be working on that video after I finish editing this one. Let me know any of these Pokemon that you were surprised to know could cause so much destruction, by the way. For me, Xerneas was the only one I never expected to be such a massive threat until we get more info in ZA. But not only do I love reading comments, they also appease the almighty algorithm alongside likes and shares. To close out, speaking of comments, one of the best from this past week was actually a string of comments because I said that all grass-type Pokemon become waifu or plant, and I didn't make those rules, someone else did. Dark Wolf commented, me looking at Chestnut, and I will always double down on my jokes. So I said, did I stutter? And then Totally a Real Bot follows up with totally a waifu. Decidueye is a waifu. Shiftry's waifu. Anchor Guy? They're grass ghosts, steelworker, right? Plant. Kartana, waifu. Meganium is the plant waifu dichotomy equivalent to being intersex in this scenario. Which I just gotta love when there's fun interactions in the comments, so never be afraid to do so. But that truly is all for today, so as always, thank you so much for watching. Don't do a thing I wouldn't do. Don't do a thing I would do. Please be nice to each other. I love you, and I'll see you next time.